I remember this one last text message from a former friend, and she said, paraphrasing, I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed. And she wasn't wrong. And I had to sit with that for a very long time. Something that I have come to understand very deeply is that people don't always love you for who you are, but they love what you can do for them. And when you begin to pivot from being helpful, useful to them, then they will do all that they can to try to push you back into that energy, that frequency that they were once able to feed from. Now, this episode probably will not be a warm and fuzzy episode, but I feel this is probably one of the most hard episodes I will probably do in this particular season. And if you are someone who is going through a journey of evolution, your glow up journey, whatever you want to call it, if you have been feeling this disconnect with people, this episode is very much for you. And make sure that you share it with your friends that are doing the same, because you will feel as though you're going crazy when you really begin to go deeper in evolution. When people depend on you, people are always looking for you to be a support. I like to think of it as sometimes we can be people's emotional support blanket. And as much as that may sound endearing, and for some, depending on how deep you're in the mix of it, you can even begin to feel nourished, or at least the illusion of being nourished by the things that you're doing for everyone else. Like you're putting yourself on fire to make sure everyone else stays warm, but no one is going out of their way to help you. And unfortunately, the hard piece of this is that they never have had to, because you have not set any boundaries around how people are to engage with you. It is a very uncomfortable moment because there's part of us that wants to be a good person. We enjoy helping and supporting other people, but the thing is that we have been trained, a lot of us have been trained to consider others before ourselves and to be selfless. And as cute as that may sound, it actually is extremely dangerous. And it is very dangerous in your evolution, because you essentially are going from one version of self to another. And when you are changing, I mentioned this in the last episode, as you're changing, the things that used to be at the frequency of what you were begin to lose its ability to connect and stand, because your frequency is elevating. It's like if I'm on the second floor, I can't hold on to what's on the eighth floor. And so you will begin to lose those connections. Those connections will become very uncomfortable if they are not aware. If they're on their own growth journey, then they actually might be like, you know what? I am so appreciative that you brought this up to my awareness so that we can hash that and move forward. And that's wonderful. But that will not be all. There are a lot of people who are banking on you consciously or subconsciously, be it on a personal or professional level. They're banking on you to remain idiotic and unaware. And also, they're banking on you, even if you do become aware, they're banking on you to stay in that frequency and be happy with it. But the moment that you begin to shift from that, others will become very upset. Now, you may be wondering, how does this come about? I'm going to go over a few areas that I have observed over the last, God, probably 20 years on just observing people and interactions, especially when it comes to women. So, part of the whole thought of what is useful, it is that you are the person who, if something happens, be it a major issue or a minor inconvenience, you're someone who will drop what you're doing to go and be a helpful listening ear. You'll be that shoulder to cry on. You're the one who's always planning. You're the one who is opening your home to others if they are needing a soft place to land. You are the one that puts all the things of you on the back burner so that everyone else can be well nourished. This usefulness has been ingrained since we were little girls. You probably have been told, share your toys. Oh, give your brother some of your ice cream because his fell. Help mom cook. Help do this. Fold the laundry, doing it with a smile, being happy for other people, contorting yourself in order for others to feel good. And to some degree, yes, being able to share, be collaborative, and those efforts are great things. Like those are very much skills that both genders should learn. But there is a overly reliance on it to where it becomes your personality. Being useful is how you get your pat on the head. I've always observed that there are people women for this focus point that, either they're very beautiful and they're praised for it. They're either really smart and they're praised for it. Then there's those that are the ones who are the helpers. And that is what they're praised for. This can be seen in your local churches as that young girl who's always there, always helping, giving people rides, doing all these, things, which on the surface looks good. But to me, observing, it always makes me beg the question, what are you trying to escape from? What are you running from? And what are you failing to do in order to look at yourself? To be monitoring yourself, to improve yourself. Helping other people is great, but if you are doing it at the cost of your own evolution, that's always an issue. There came a time in my life in which I really had to dig into the discomfort of saying no and being comfortable in that. For the first couple of years, it was extremely hard because for me, I derived my value and my worth based on how much I could be selfless and how much I could be of a good help. I remember the first time doing so, it felt like acid was thrown upon me because I wasn't going to come running to a friend's aid. And they were very upset by that. They felt that I wasn't abandoning them in their time of need. But I had to put that first experience under my belt in order for me to now be able to just not answer the phone if I feel that there's not a need for me to communicate, or if I just feel that the relationship is one-sided or I am having to do something that is not where I want to be. It sounds very selfish, but men do it all the time. And not to say that that is a reasoning to do something, but this is where, again, I've always mentioned that you need both the masculine and the feminine. You need the masculine to be able to have as a container to hold yourself. And boundaries essentially is what that is providing. It's giving you a structure for people to know how to engage with you. You don't have to burn people up, but you do need to have some boundaries. When I did that initial first no, it felt again like someone threw acid on my face, all over me. And that person was very upset and began to distance themselves. They began to start playing these mind games of, oh, well, I guess you have something better to do, or I guess you have other things to do. And that for me was a really hardcore wake up moment because it let me know that, hey, they're telling you they don't give a damn about you as an individual and your growth. What they do care about is that they are able to get nourishment from you. There are people who are call themselves your friend who essentially feed off of you. It's like you have all this energy and people can sense that and they will feed themselves off of your energy. And you'll wonder why you're always so depleted, you're so heavy, you're so exhausted. And your exhaustion isn't just on a physical realm, but also on energetics. And it's because you're being drained and pulled and exploited quite often But the area of accountability for you is that you are also part of the equation. If you remove your energy, you remove yourself, you place boundaries, then there may be some disconnection. You may even have a situation like I did where this person eventually just left. Was very felt very cold, very hard, but they just left. And as hard as it was in the moment to feel as though I was left for standing up for myself, this person did me a wonderful gift. It allowed me to really get clear and have a really clear line of sight and of patterns that I was conducting myself under, but also what I was accepting, what I was allowing people to get away with and do. And that essentially was a key catalyst in my evolution of growth and how I got here today. Now, by having that experience, I went through some actual physical changes by having all this shifts. So with this experience, I had to me what would be considered an upheaval of my life. There were people that I thought would be in my life for years to come that seemed like everybody was dropping like flies. And I was no longer being that useful person. I wasn't the person anymore that you could call at midnight to say, "Hey, I got drunk at a bar and I need a ride home." I wasn't getting out of my bed to go risk my life to go take this person home when they easily could have caught a lift. They could have budgeted their stuff better. Like there's so many things that could happen, but they feel like, oh, we'll just call on old trusted Christian. I don't like that feeling. I never did back then, but I did not have the confidence and essentially the language to articulate what it was I was feeling. I just knew that I felt a certain level of resentment and it felt really gross, but I didn't have words for it. But I also, on a much deeper level, I don't believe at the time I was mentally prepared for what I would lose. But there's always a gift when things are lost. We're never just left worse, or it may feel like it at first because we're so used to away, but it is the greatest feeling to have all those individuals be removed out of my energy, out of my life. I began to feel whole. I felt much more stable. I didn't feel so anxious. I didn't feel so heavy. And now, granted, I did have times of where I felt grief because those relationships, despite how they were not healthy or helpful, they also were what I knew. And that oftentimes, as we evolve in our self growth, evolution, glow up journey, that is something that we don't address. And it's not something I don't hear about often is that process that we are going through. You are losing the life you once knew, everything that you knew, despite its dysfunction. It is what was familiar, and what's familiar provides a level of comfort to us. So when you essentially are uprooted on that level by so many people at once, it can feel just jarring. And there may be times where you may want to try to reconnect with those people, but ultimately, once you see, you can't unsee. So even though you may try to rework with those relationships, if those individuals are not consciously aware of change for themselves, it's going to be a no. It's not going to work. Now, I want to ask you a quick question. And I want you to sit with this over the week or two. Where in your life have you placed yourself on mute? Where have you put your needs and you've silenced them? This is a hard question to sit with because it takes a lot of acknowledging on our part what we are doing. I feel often when I hear all this content about self development, self growth, we like to push blame onto other people and to make ourselves be the victim. I believe in accountability. So I believe that a person can only do as much to you as you allow and what you are putting yourself into. Now, there are things that are way outside of your control, but a lot of the day to day things are not so sinister. It is because of the way we are allowing others to engage with us. So, if that means that you are being open to always being that helper, the person who can be trusted, when you experience a lack of reciprocity, that means that you are allowing such into your life. And it takes you to then pivot that into a new direction. Now, you may be wondering, like, okay, Mystique, you went through all that, and it sounds horrible. It will make you not want to do a kind of a glow up. It'll make you not want to really endeavor into those areas. And I will say that from an honest view, as uncomfortable as it was to lose so many people at such a pivotal moment in my life, what did last and what did become to actually come into my life, or the relationships that were in my life that remained, those relationships became so much richer and deeper because I had more energy and I was being more respective of myself, that others had to do the same. It meant that we had some really good heart to heart conversations, and where they were able to pour into me and I into them. And there's this beautiful, like, lusciousness that comes with that. That also meant that new relationships that came into my field were of the frequency that I was at now, not from the past. And this felt good. I could tell there were moments in where I would slip back into those old patterns, because that's going to happen. And that's something I really want to express to you. If you feel like, well, I was firm and then I started people pleasing kicked in, or these wounds from the past start to come up in you again, it will happen. You understand the pattern, you see it, you express it, you release it, and go on about your business. You acknowledge it for what it was and what it is and why it's coming. I had to get to a point where I thanked my old ways. I thanked them because I understood the reason why they were even here. We live in systems, structures, conditioning that has been rooted since we were children. And so if you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s and beyond, like, think about how many years of over and over those sorts of concepts have been ingrained. You can't expect watching a one little couple of YouTube videos and some TikToks that you're going to magically undo decades worth of conditioning. And so when you're able to acknowledge it, you can stand in the container of observing it. You see it for what it is. You acknowledge it. You thank it. I thank you for coming to try to support me and try to be protective of me, because a lot of the things that we do as women, it is a safety precaution. It is that I am very assertive. And if you've been assertive as a young girl and you were maybe hit for doing so, you were hit with either criticism or maybe physical harm. Over time, your brain says, okay, I can't assert myself too much, because if I do, that could potentially cause me physical harm. And that is okay to acknowledge that, but then reassert and reframe yourself to know that, hey, we're no longer there. We're not in that. We're here today. And the past that may have occurred, we're not there anymore. But being able to sit with that, acknowledge it, and give it its space is going to be the most refreshing thing that you can do. Some other ways that, once releasing this need and then having this release of people out of your life, like after no longer being useful, I felt refreshed because I had so much more energy, resources available to pour into myself. Now, this might be probably one of the harder aspects, is that when you are used to, again, always being that person, let's just use the example of family. You've been the good daughter, you're always there when someone is in a bind. When you then take all of that back and you pour it into yourself, or you have it now for yourself. I know when I began to do that, I began to want to actually go experience all the things I had on my Pinterest board. I want to go to the spa. I want to go on a vacation. I want to purchase something. I want to go and do a course. It felt initially very uncomfortable. It felt like I was doing something super horrible because I was pouring into me. I did those things, as I often do, uncomfortable. And I was able to sit back in a more observing mode instead of locking onto that feeling, but allowing it to be comfortable in duality. I'm doing the thing, but I'm also very uncomfortable. Experiencing what I want to experience, but doing so while feeling as though I shouldn't be doing this or that I'm unworthy. I'm not valuable enough to do this. But by doing that, it eventually gets to a point where that other part starts to die out because you're consistently doing new things that are competing and eventually will push out those sorts of confliction. And then as you get even better, you can sit with those conflictions and say that, yes, I do deserve to go to the spa, experience all that is wonderful in that, feel good about them bringing me a beverage and enjoying that. Again, if you have gained your identity or your identity is wrapped around how much you are useful, please understand you will go through, I will kind of look at it as a bit of an energetic psychosis outside of your reality when you begin to do something different. When you are no longer identifying yourself and operating as, I'm useful, I'm the helper. When you are no longer locked into that and you're saying, nope, I'm a goddess. This is who I am. As much as it sounds cute, if you see a TikTok that just says these affirmations, yes, it may sound cute in the moment, but like, I'm going to always sit you in the groundedness of reality. That is not going to be immediate. Now, change is immediate. The process of change, though, is not. That is what you are going to experience over the days, months, and possibly years to come. Now, changes in the mind is an immediate switch, but you have to still go through the process. Most things are not going to be a copy paste sort of situation. There are some situations that it does, but for the most, you won't gain the nourishment unless you are able to look at what you are experiencing, what you've experienced, why you've experienced it, and then that's where you get your golden nuggets from. As I begin to wrap up this video, I want to leave you with some things to think about over the course of the week. I'm very big about integration. So you can get all the conceptual ideas you want, but if you are not able to implement them into your life, then it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. You do not have to burn every relationship you have. There will be some relationships that you do need to burn, like burn that bridge and walk the hell away. Just go because they were never there to help you in the sense of what you may have wanted. This could be a marriage, relationship, intimate relationship, friendship, bestie, your mom, your family. It can be your job. It can be the community that you're in. It can be anything. I want you to really examine the relationships that you have and really be serious and honest with yourself. Do I feel nourished when I engage with these, or do I feel depleted? Like if you talk to your bestie and every time you hang up the phone, you feel like you just ran a 20-mile marathon, that might be an indicator for you to really examine the interaction. In your marriage or your intimate partners, if you feel unfulfilled, you feel frustrated, every time you see them, you want to throw a brick at them, but I have these kids and I don't want them to grow up without this other parent, or, what will society think if I divorce? All these different aspects. Or if it's family, like, oh my God, you only get one mom. At the end of the day, you are responsible for your life. and the reality that you engage with. And either you have one or two options. Either you accept the reality that it is as it is and understand that it may never get any better, it actually could get worse, or you can make those changes in your life to say, this once was what I was accepting. I'm not accepting that anymore. And it doesn't have to be this loud, angry, aggressive way. It could just be that you start to pull back subtly. And I actually will challenge every lady that's watching this to pull back your energy and observe. You're not doing it from trying to be fake, any of that, but just pull back and observe how the dynamics work. Do these connections become angry that you're pulling yourself back a bit, that you're not answering on the first ring, that you're not dropping everything to engage with them? Are they giving you, some people go aggressive. They get very attitude about it. Oh, you can't answer the phone now? Like, you've been answering the phone for years. The one or two times that you didn't, there's an issue. No, just have a mental note. But it also could be on the flip. They could act very passive. They could start to be a little bit like clingy. Also notice that as well. Some people, which to me is the ones that you can find that are actually really, really there to have a really good relationship, if they notice this over a pattern, they will reach out to you and say, hey, is there something wrong? I'm noticing that when I'm reaching out, you're not communicating with me, or there's been such a delay. I just want to make sure that you're okay. Like, I'm noticing normally you're this and you're not this. And if it's coming from a deep, really honest, loving way, acknowledge it and say, yes, I am pulling myself back a bit, really trying to take more energy into myself. And I really appreciate that you value this relationship that much to even reach out, because it's uncomfortable, which is why people either go passive or they go aggressive. Because at the core of it, they're uncomfortable with actually acknowledging that there's a shift. If you notice that people are being really, really doing the most in that withdrawal, that to me is I will be phasing myself out completely. It's depending on the relationship, how that dynamic may change. It could be your marriage, it could be friendships, whatever it may be. You ultimately have to make the decision on what it is that you are willing to accept. So if this was a marriage, it could be, you know what? I'm gonna leave these kids with this dad, and I'm going to go do a solo date. I'm gonna go to the library, whatever your thing is, and you do that. And they may be uncomfortable. They may be pissed. But at the end of the day, as long as your kids are not in danger, um, this is a good rebalancer to say, hey, things are shifting, things are changing. And if it gets to the point where you say, hey, this is no longer feeding me. And if we're really honest, it may have never fed you. It may have never been nourishing to you, but it was what you accepted for the time. You acknowledge that phase of you and you allow it to go. With the women that I've worked with in the past, when that does happen, what it does is it gives them space and expandedness to then receive a partner that actually matches them and the way that they are now. All that growth, they're now valued, they're loved richly, and that is such a magically delicious way to be. For the people who have left me, they have not caused harm. They actually gave me one of the greatest gifts ever. And I'm able to really count, as they say in all biblical ways, count it all joy. I really now am able to. And now being so far have grown and evolved, I am immensely grateful, because sometimes what is painful, what we're gripping on, we need a little bit of an extra boost to release so that we can then flourish. If this video resonated with you, you should subscribe to this channel because you'll be getting more of that which feeds you. And if you really are doing a good deed, you would share it with a few of your friends, share it in your group chat because there are other women who need to hear this. And until next time, make sure you're living your best life.